I was pushed to a point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things that helped me, and some things that I think can help all of us. I mean, people ask me quite a bit, Sam, if you could go back, would you still travel the way you did or still go on this trip? And on one hand, I would never want to relive captivity and wouldn't wish that on anybody. On the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would also never want to give up everything that's come from it.
Welcome to Midland Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Midland Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Midland Financial. Today's guest is Sam Goodwin, American entrepreneur, author, and professional speaker. Sam Goodwin is a former Division I collegiate hockey player who has seamlessly transitioned from the ice rink to the boardroom and beyond. As a co-founder of a tech company and an NGO in Singapore, Sam has demonstrated his entrepreneurial prowess and commitment to making a positive impact on a global scale. Remarkably, he is also one of the few people who have traveled to all 193 countries in the world, a testament to his adventurous spirit and determination. As a thought leader on embracing uncertainty, Sam delivers powerful keynotes to organizations worldwide. His insightful and inspiring talks resonate with audiences at large corporate conventions, intimate leadership retreats, and everything in between. Through his experiences, Sam shares valuable lessons on navigating the unknown, building resilience, and achieving success against all odds. Join us as we delve into Sam Goodwin's incredible journey, explore the principles that have guided his diverse endeavors, and gain actionable insights on embracing uncertainty and achieving your own goals. Well, I am so excited for today's conversation with Sam Goodwin. He's an American entrepreneur, author, and professional speaker. And let's also say he's a hockey player too. So welcome to the show, Sam. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so listen, I love sharing the entrepreneurial journey, and I think you really have an interesting one. And we'll spend a lot of time on what you're doing today. We'll spend the lion's share, but I want to give our listeners a sense of who you are and kind of what brought you to the point of where you are today. So can you share a little bit of your background and your journey to, I guess, becoming an entrepreneur or being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I am a hockey player. I spent most of my childhood and teenage years focused on playing hockey. Was fortunate to have a little bit of success with the sport. I played in college at Niagara University in upstate New York, and after that, I graduated there in 2012. I ended up taking my first professional job in Singapore. I had an opportunity to join a tech startup business, a very entrepreneurial venture. And one of the things that I found interesting was that a lot of the skills and traits that I developed from being a competitive athlete, from being a hockey player, were also applicable and very helpful on the entrepreneurial roller coaster, on the ups and downs of trying to start a company and start a business. So I plan to only be in Singapore for about 3 months, but I ended up staying for 6 years, from 2012 to 2018, and it was a fantastic way to begin my professional career. And as I mentioned, those skills from being an athlete, the mental toughness, critical thinking, resilience. How often have we had a boss or a coach tell us control what you can control? And I think athletes also have this unusual ability to deal with failure and being told no and persevere through that. So those translated into my professional life, into the beginning of my career, and also we hear CEOs say all the time that they'd like to hire athletes. So really kind of used my life and career as a competitive athlete to move into my more professional career, which started in Singapore for about 6 years.
Nice. Well, it seems like you've had a lot of life lessons from competitive sports, and I think that's the thing that gets overlooked a lot, right? As parents start enrolling their kids into sports, whether it's baseball, hockey, football, it seems like a lot of them have these aspirations that their child's going to be a professional athlete. But I think there's so many other byproducts that come as a result of that. A lot of them you mentioned, what are the top two things that you've taken away from sports playing very competitively that when you think about it really have dominated and helped your ability to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I think you make a great point. And someone may go pro as a professional athlete, but the data says that statistically they're going to go pro in something else. And as I kind of mentioned, just it was kind of unexpected to me to see the way that this that these skills and traits kind of transition into the real world. And when I was in college playing hockey, we had a program called Life After Sports, and they talked to us about this, about how athletes have a bit of an advantage because of what they're learning, and to channel that into their professional life. And I probably only paid attention a little bit. It probably didn't totally register with me at that time. But then as I started my professional career, especially in a high paced, kind of high risk entrepreneurial environment, I learned and kind of realized that a lot of the things that I was dealing with, the challenges that I was dealing with, the performance under pressure, the teamwork, things like that were not necessarily exactly the same, but the same recipe or responses was relevant to those challenges. And I had learned some of those things through a life of competitive athletics.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, you're one of the few people that, you might be the only one I'm aware of, but I know there aren't that many who've traveled to all 193 countries in the world, right? Um, where do you think that desire for you to see the world came from?
So when I went to Singapore in 2012, things really kind of took off from there. I found myself in the heart of Southeast Asia. I had was in my early 20s, had a little bit of flexibility in my work schedule. I had the world's best airport in my backyard, and I just took advantage of the opportunity to explore as much of the region and beyond as possible. And Larry, just a personal preference when I traveled, I didn't like to repeat places. So even if I went somewhere and had a fantastic experience, the next weekend, the next holiday, the next opportunity I had, I would just go somewhere different. And I put this formula into play for about 6 years. And in early 2018, I realized that I had traveled to about 120 countries in the world. And it was at this point when I remember thinking, well, how many are there? I had always traveled because it was fun and I enjoyed it. But most importantly, I learned from it. Travel was the best education I'd ever had. It was
Sure.
never about ticking boxes or checking places off a list. So this all kind of happened organically. And then at that point, I thought, I did some research. I learned that there are 193 fully recognized UN sovereign states. And frankly, kind of the competitive athlete again kicked in. It was like, well, maybe I can go to all of them. And so it really started very organically, and then later evolved into kind of this goal of my style of travel changed a little bit and evolved into this goal of trying to travel to all of them.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like it started off innocently and then ended competitively. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a good summary. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So, I know on one of those journeys, you ended up in a precarious situation where you found yourself in, solitary confinement. Perhaps you could share with our listeners that story, that adventure, and that precarious situation, and talk about how that kind of shaped the next chapter of your life, because I can't imagine going through something like that. And I know you've shared this before, and I think our listeners will find it very compelling. I can't see how something like that can't shape your future and what happens next, if you will.
Yeah. So this goal of traveling to every country in the world uh, evolved and became something that I really cared about. And like any worthwhile venture or endeavor in life, it wasn't without its challenges. And perhaps most notably, in the spring of 2019, I had traveled to 180 of 193 countries in the world. And the next place that I went to was Syria. And one of the most significant things that I've learned through my travels is that places that are negatively perceived, or that Western media tells us we're not supposed to like, these were places where I had many of my best experiences. I camped at the base of Angel Falls in Venezuela. I coached the North Korean national hockey team. I coached volleyball in Kabul, celebrated New Year's Eve on Kish Island in Iran. So some of these more off the beaten path places. And despite everything that was happening in Syria, I was confident that the same was going to be the case. And when I arrived there on May 25th, 2019, it was not the case. I was kidnapped off the street, and I was accused of espionage, of being an American spy, of collaborating with terrorists. And they held me there for the next 9 weeks in some pretty uncomfortable situations. As you mentioned, solitary confinement. There were blindfolded interrogations. I was threatened. Thankfully, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, the situation ended peacefully, and I was released on July 26th, 2019, after 9 weeks. And in the wake of that, and I can talk more about the details, I can answer any questions you might be interested in, but what I think about a lot today is, why does this matter? Why should anybody care about hearing this story? It's like, cool story, Sam, but what do I do with this? And really, I view the world through a spiritual lens. I feel like I was given this for a reason, and I don't want to be known for the things that happen to me. I want to be known for the way I've responded to them.
Sure.
And so really, as you kind of said, it's really had a profound impact on myself and my family, and where I'm at today with it is trying to reflect and put things into context and pull out messages and lessons that I learned from rock bottom that I think can be helpful to all of us when we're facing uncertainty, when we're feeling trapped in our own prisons in our personal and professional lives.
Yeah. So what are some like takeaways that you had from that experience that you share on a regular basis that were helpful to you, that would help our listeners if they're in a situation where they feel trapped or they can't get out of? What are some of those lessons that you took away and implemented from that to help you kind of be known for that reaction rather than the response, rather than that event that took place?
What I talk a lot about today is uncertainty. I was pushed to a point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things that helped me, and some things that I think can help all of us. I mean, people ask me quite a bit, Sam, if you could go back, would you still travel the way you did, or still go on this trip? And on one hand, I would never want to relive captivity and wouldn't wish that on anybody. On the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would also never want to give up everything that's come from it. The opportunity to meet some remarkable people, to grow in character and in faith, and really just in understanding of the stuff in life that actually matters. And those two things kind of go together, and it makes it kind of a tough question to answer. But I think, we could be held hostage by anything: alcohol, drugs, illness, relationships, finances. But the way that we embrace and manage those challenges, I think the actions we take, I think that defines who we become.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, I would ask you this. I mean, I think you said that Syria was your 180th country. Is that right?
I had been to 180, so it was 181.
So you still had 12 countries that you visited post Syria. Were any of them, areas that were, would give you similar pause or concern based upon kind of what you hear about them, or were they quote unquote easier countries to kind of check off your list from there?
Yeah, thankfully they were easier places to visit, and I did complete that journey. And one of the things that I reflected on a lot after I came home, after several months of reflection and putting things into context, was not letting what happened there conquer me. And one of the most important steps I took to addressing that was to continue what I had been pursuing beforehand. And that was what led me to traveling to the rest of them. And on December 31st, 2019, I traveled to Brazil, and that was the last country. And I joined a group of only at the time about 100 people in history who had ever done that, and just feel so grateful and fortunate for all of the experiences that came from the journey.
Yeah, amazing stuff. I don't know. I guess you don't know until you know. I don't know if I would have had that same, tenacity to continue those travels. I guess I would have to look at what the list was after that.
I had to have a couple conversations with my mom as well.
I bet. I bet. So, one of the things that's come out of this is you wrote a book, right? Saving Sam. Why did you write the book, and what are you looking to have come from it?
Yeah. So on one hand, it's, I think, an unforgettable story that includes celebrities, heads of state, high stakes diplomacy, a travel journey to every country in the world. On the other hand, and I think more importantly, as I was kind of mentioning, it's about what we all learn through this experience that we believe can be helpful to others today. It's about how I think we can all turn our own challenges and adversities into assets. And one of the things with the book that I think is worthwhile, and also one of the reasons it took me a few years to write it, is that when I was released, something I learned was that while I was trapped on the inside, I had no idea about anything that was happening on the outside.
Sure.
And it's been overwhelming for me to learn about all of the people, from people who loved me to people who had no idea who I was, and everywhere in between, to hear about everything that they did. And the way that the book is structured is it essentially toggles between me stuck on the inside and my family's kind of race against the clock efforts on the outside. And it pushes these two stories together in tandem. It has this kind of Apollo 13-esque structure to it, where there's this under-resourced entity stuck on the inside and a group of people trying to help that stuck person. And the difference is that in Apollo 13 they could talk to each other, but the structure is kind of the same. So that's kind of the basis for the book that's that I wrote.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, what are you expecting to accomplish out of it? Are you just expecting to use it as a resource or a beacon for those who may be struggling to kind of follow your journey and walk away with ideas on perhaps how to help better their own lives?
I think it could be a combination of things. I think people could just enjoy reading an interesting story. I think that people may, as you were kind of saying, take some messages or lessons from it that could potentially help them when they're facing their own breeds of uncertainty. I think people may be informed on perhaps the Middle East, or maybe even the wider globe. I think also that people may become a little bit more informed on this space of hostages and wrongful detainees, and the way that some of the countries around the world use this sort of hostage diplomacy for leverage and bargaining chips. And then also people may learn a little bit about Syria, specifically about the conflict and the now 13-year-long war that has been so tragic. It began with the Arab Spring. So I think it could be a range of different things, from kind of informing, inspiring, entertaining. It could be a range of any of those.
Multifaceted. So, one of the things you mentioned is all these people, when you were in, solitary, and you were kind of out of the general public, not knowing kind of what was going on behind the scenes, right? Your focus was really on your own survival at that point. But I understand that your sister's college roommate helped you in the efforts to get home. And, I think this kind of pays homage to that statement where you don't know until you come out and you kind of, I guess, start reconciling all these people that were, had your back, so to speak, and were working, tirelessly and putting a lot of effort into getting you home. How did your sister's college roommate help in that effort?
On the day I was released, and also I can say I can kind of find some humor in everything that happened now, and of course at the time it was anything but that. But I'll never forget, on the day I was released in Lebanon, a few minutes after I was reunited with my parents, and it was looking as if this was all going to end peacefully. My dad said to me, "Hey, do you remember Stephanie's college roommate, who's also named Stephanie?" And I looked at him and was like, not really. I had been living in Asia for most of the time that my younger sister was in college, and I maybe heard the name, but I just didn't quite know. And I kind of quickly learned that it was actually a phone call that my sister had made to her former college roommate, despite the U.S. government telling my family to keep everything very tight. It turns out that roommate Steph is Lebanese, and her uncle was good friends with a man named General Abbas Ibrahim, who heads Lebanon's internal security. And he has kind of a sort of a secret back channel relationship with the Syrians, and was able to mediate my release after all of the many branches of the U.S. government told my family to essentially manage their expectations. And so I think she sort of broke the rules, but I think oftentimes young people, millennials, kind of problem solve a little bit differently. And I think there are some lessons in that, with the way that we problem solve and the importance of networking.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when I was listening to you tell that story and that situation. I'm reminded of a statement I make quite often, which and I've kind of, my boys have grown up with this because I repeat it incessantly to them, and that is, your network equals your net worth. And when I say net worth, and I tell them this too, and other people that I taught, I don't mean just financial net worth. I mean, your relationships, everything that can help you be a better person, human being, financially or otherwise. If you have a good network, and clearly in this case, that network might have just been the thing that saved your life. In other instances, it may be helping you get a job or meeting people that might be helpful to you. It's so important to build relationships through life. And it sounds like the one that your sister built with her roommate was one that, came through in the end for you, which is amazing.
I think you're spot on. And it's said all the time, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, and things
Right.
like that.
It's almost very flippant, but in this case, it was, life-saving.
It truly was. It was truly life-saving. And actually, some of the kind of separate from my sister, but a lot of that for me, that kind of networking and those relationships, again, I can kind of link back to being an athlete and having the right teammates, surrounding ourselves with the right people. And I think our teammates, the people we choose to surround ourselves in our life, can determine so much of who we are, how we think, how successful we are, frankly, who we become as people. And I just think that I would say to anybody, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Oh, you're right. Another thing we talk about, you want to see yourself, look at your 5 closest relationships, and that's pretty much
Exactly.
you looking right back at yourself. So, one of the
Exactly.
things you talk about quite often, and it's probably because of your experiences, is that uncertainty is something we all need to grow, right? Why do you think that is?
I mean, when I reflect on this experience, it was a situation where rock bottom was teaching me things that a mountaintop never could. So for me, uncertainty means opportunity. As I was saying, we could be held hostage by anything, but the way that we embrace and manage those challenges, I really think it's a reflection and results in who we become. I talk sometimes about what I kind of characterize as the sine curve of life. So we remember trigonometry, that up and down, never ending radio wave. And I think in when we ride that sine curve in life, when we're at the top of the curve and things are going well, it's important to have humility and awareness and gratitude. But I don't know that anything deeply good emerges from the top. It's always at the bottom of the curve where, when we're facing our biggest challenges, where all the growth happens. And that was my experience with this. And, you know, this experience in Syria, it doesn't define me, but it has become a part of who I am.
I mean, how could it not? And I agree. I feel like we're using a lot of these adages, but you can really tell who a person is when they're at that bottom point, right? I
Mm-hmm.
guess you could also say the same for the top, right? Because there are a lot of people that make it on that high wave of the sine curve, and they don't have humility, they don't have gratitude, and you see who they really are coming through as well. So I guess to some degree on both those points, you can see that. So, listen, I talk to a lot of hockey people. I'm a big hockey person. My family's big hockey. And you mentioned it earlier, so I have to ask about this as well. I mean, how do you end up coaching the North Korean national ice hockey? How does that happen? The national ice hockey team for North Korea.
Yeah, this was in 2016. And interestingly, when I moved to Singapore in 2012, I actually didn't even bring my hockey gear with me. I thought, well, I'm moving to the equator, literally.
Right. Why
There's not
would
going
you?
to be any, yeah, there's not going to be any hockey. And to my surprise, hockey became a big part of my life in Asia. There's a community there. I was able to connect with a lot of American and Canadian, European expats. There was a league, and there's also leagues and communities around Southeast Asia and around Asia, which became a big part of my life over there. As I said, a bit unexpectedly, but in 2016, I was approached by a Canadian man who was putting together essentially a sports exhibition, kind of a cultural exchange, to coach the national team in North Korea. And because I was based in Asia, some of the people there, kind of communication kind of got funneled to me a little bit, and had the opportunity to go and do that. And I spent a week in Pyongyang, and my time there was fantastic. We were treated incredibly well. The food's incredible. You've probably had Korean food. We were treated very well, and I'm not oblivious to the fact that I saw what they wanted me to see, and getting off that kind of tourist track, things can look relatively grim. But my experience was so positive, and the players there, they listened, they worked hard, they wanted to be there, they were grateful for the opportunity to learn, and it's also really fantastic to use hockey, to use a sport to build a cultural bridge between a group of people, between myself and a group of people who in some ways don't have too much in common, but we're able to bond over this common interest. And so kind of this really memorable display of humanity.
Amazing. I couldn't even imagine that happening. But yeah, I do know that there's a big hockey community in Hong Kong, for example, because a former New York Ranger who I used to follow when he played for there, Barry Beck, is very involved in that community out there. And ironically enough, I met somebody from Hong Kong a couple of years ago at an NHL event who knew Barry Beck. And when I told them I was a fan of his, they ended up, when they got home to Hong Kong, had him sign a photo, and they mailed it to me. And it was pretty amazing. And I couldn't believe how big a hockey community they had over there. It was eye-opening that the sport is, making such leaps and bounds in that way, that it's not just a North American sport anymore by any means.
It's not, and Hong Kong puts on a lot of different great hockey programs. They have one particular tournament called the Hong Kong Fives, which is in early May, and I played in that tournament, I think 6 years in a row. And there were NHLers that were playing it, all the way down to local, the local kids.
Sure.
and everywhere in between. And it was just really fantastic, but also just so unexpected to see
Right.
that type of interest and that type of growth in the sport in just a very non-traditional market.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, listen, it's great having you on, Sam, and I'm looking forward to reading the book because as we're recording today, it's not out yet, but I am looking forward to it being released, and when it is released, I will be reading it. So if you're listening to this today, Saving Sam is out. You're able to go purchase it, so make sure you check that out. And one of the things that we do, Sam, is we ask each of our guests the same final question because we are all about joy on the Midland Money Mindset. And that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
I currently live in Washington, D.C., but today I am in my hometown of St. Louis, and I'm visiting my parents for a few days, which doesn't happen too much as I would like anymore. So just being at home with my parents today has brought me a lot of joy.
I'm sure it brought them joy too, and I'm sure you have to check in pretty often based upon your past experiences. Just
Yeah.
saying, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but Um, so listen, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, they're looking for a speaker for an event, what's the easiest and the best way to do that, to learn more and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks. I have my website. It's samrgoodwin.com. I'm also on social media. Please feel free to send me a message. I would love to connect. And please feel free to reach out anytime for any reason. And it's been great being on this show and being connected to your community and your listeners. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity to do more of it.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, Sam, and joining us today, and enjoy the day.
My pleasure. Thanks, Larry.
I want to thank Sam Goodwin for being a guest on the Midland Money Mindset. Sam's story is a wild one and something we can all learn from. I know I will be checking out his latest book, Saving Sam, the true story of an American's disappearance in Syria and his family's extraordinary flight to bring him home. And I think you should also check it out too. The lessons Sam shares with his audiences are extraordinary and ones that anyone can benefit from. Sam Goodwin and all that he is up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find him can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Midland Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Midland Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on the Midland Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.